we need an old experienced leader or a younger one?
Look, I, at my age, cannot even envisage what you want. Ghana is a young country. We need the young people to take their destiny into their own hands by saying, this is what we want. It's not young or older we want. We want people who have the capacity and the skills to be able to lead this country forward. It may not be a matter of age. Somebody who understands that we live in an age of technology and ICT, somebody who knows that quality education is important, somebody who knows that it doesn't matter where you come from. You are going to be competing in this world, and when you are competing in this world, want skilled people around you. What is a president? A president or any leader, even if you are running a company, is somebody who has the skills to be able to pick good people to work with him. Secondly, somebody who can discern between good and bad advice. And thirdly, somebody, once he's been given the advice, knows how to act. You act quickly like crazy. If you are wrong, go change it and modify it and change. But those are the three qualities that you need in a leader. It doesn't have to be age, doesn't have to be anything, but it means that you need somebody who has the national interest at heart. He knows where he's going. It's a vision. Somebody who can tell people, I'm building a cathedral, and the cathedral looks like this. So when you see the people working for him, they all know what they are doing. They won't tell you, oh, I'm just a bricklayer. They tell you, I'm building a cathedral, because you are leading them. And when you're a leader, you don't get stranded in the desert. Because when you are moving, you look behind to see if you are being followed. If you are not being followed, it means your message has not been well received. You repeat your message, you endorse it, and then you are a leader.
Hi, good evening. That was just a teaser of my exclusive interview with Mr. Kwame yesterday. We'll show the full version on Thursday. Later tonight, we'll show aspects of it where he talked about our discussion for tonight, the Economic Partnership Agreement. As you would know, ECOWAS's meeting ended with the high point being the handover of the leadership mantle from La Côte d'Ivoire to Ghana. President Alassane Ouattara handed over the leadership to President John Mahama as the new ECOWAS chair. One of the important observations from the meeting was the way in which the ECOWAS leaders were going to react to the request to sign an economic partnership agreement with the European Union. Before Mr. Mahama headed to the meeting in Yamoussoukro, members of the Third World Network had sought audience with him at the Peduase Lodge to explain to him why he should not append his signatures to the economic partnership agreement. It appears that Nigeria or Abuja held sway at that meeting. That agreement is yet to be signed. But is it in our interest or is it not in our interest? Are we just being emotional about signing this agreement, and are we losing fact of the aspects of globalization that may compel us eventually to get ourselves in a situation like that? Tonight we have two people to have this discussion on both sides of the argument. Third World Network is here represented by Mr. Gyekye Tanoh. He must have made significant input in that audience with the president. And of course, Franklin Cudjoe of Imani is also here. Imani are celebrating, is it 10 years?
10 years.
10 years, yes. Imani are celebrating 10 years, and we'll proudly associate this program with the 10th anniversary of Imani. Later tonight, we'll be talking to Franklin about the China CBD loan, which, from what government people say, it appears that they have given up on the loan. Imani had said earlier that the loan was not going to arrive. We'll get into that later on. But Brazini, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you.
Likewise.
I'm shaking his hands because he agreed at the last minute to join this program, and we are grateful for that. And congratulations on the 10th anniversary.
Pleasure. Thank you.
After the break, we'll talk about the Economic Partnership Agreement. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much. And this is Good Evening Ghana. We are live from Metro TV. Tonight we're talking about the Economic Partnership Agreement. What has happened is that the European Union has sent an agreement to West African countries to consider and to sign to create a new business relationship in terms of how the commodities from West Africa get to Europe and how finished products from Europe get exported to West Africa. and the European Union is asking for a certain agreement that will govern this relationship for the next so many decades. There are different views of the matter. We'll get into that, and perhaps we'll get into what the agreement is asking for. But let me welcome again Mr. Gyekye Tanoh and Mr. Franklin Cudjoe, Gyekye Tanoh of the Third World Network and Franklin Cudjoe of Imani. Do you feel successful and gratified, Third World Network, that His Excellency the President went to Yamoussoukro and came back without appending his signature to the EPA, given that you had made representation to him not to sign?
Well, Third World Network was in a group of different organizations in Ghana, so I don't want to take the credit.
It was an amalgamation of
yes, yeah.
Around the EPA issue.
Around the EPA. I mean, there are many people who are concerned about it. Farmers groups, manufacturers, civil society organizations, workers groups, so on and so forth. So do we feel gratified? Well, we are gratified to the degree that there's a state of execution, so to speak. Okay. The report coming out from Yamoussoukro is that Nigeria raised objections, and because of those objections, the heads of state agreed that they ought to go back to their respective countries and conduct stakeholder consultations for the next 2 months, within which period they hope that the reservations or concerns that Nigeria have might be resolved. So in that kind of news coming out, it's not entirely clear to me what the specific position of the Ghana government is. You might recall that the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Trade said that in principle the agreement that was on the table was pretty much good to go. And the only outstanding issue was to resolve the concerns of Nigeria. So since that kind of, makes the Ghanaian position slightly ambiguous, or if you're to give it a literal interpretation, might suggest that they are actually for what is on the table, and we are concerned about what is on the table, then I'm not too sure if it'd be premature to.
But why are you concerned about the agreement? Here's an agreement where the European Union is saying to us that they're going to allow us 100% access to their markets, and so we can export everything to the European Union. Now, if you look at the salary levels in the European Union countries, if you take Britain, France, Spain, and Germany, you will notice that if we are able to export our products to those countries, we can probably price them higher than we can price them in Ghana, and we have a bigger market to access. Why is that a bad thing?
Well, we've been exporting to the European Union for hundreds of years. The particular arrangement under which we are currently trading is itself, goes back to, at least 14 years. Prior to that, there was an agreement with the ACP, with the Kuala Lumpur Convention, going back to 1975. Probably you were not even born then, anyway. So we've been trading with the European Union for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there will be a wide range of opinion as to whether the structure of that trade, is one that has the potential to continue to uplift us from our status as a raw material producer and exporter, or indeed the structure of that trade will actually confirm and embed us, make us over-specialized and stay as exporters to raw materials. So I think those are some of the considerations that have to be brought to bear. The other element also is that it's always good to probably even take one step back. What is our economy and what are its difficulties? And what is the kind of economic path that might be optimal for us? And how does that tell us what kind of trade policy or trade arrangement do we need? And does the EPA satisfy that? Now, if you're an economy which is primarily people who are in the agricultural sector who are operating under stress, that even the smallest farmer, his or her ability to reproduce the cycle of production, whether it is seeds, fertilizer, water, land, credit, markets, transport, warehousing, whatever it is. If they're not able to go through that circuit in a way that is sustainable, in a way that guarantees them a decent livelihood, that guarantees them an ability to save and therefore to invest in expansion or higher productivity and so on and so forth, then there's a problem. I don't think that trade liberalization has necessarily solved that problem. I think that you'll be hard-pressed to find millions of Ghanaian farmers going onto the streets to say, since rice imports came, it has forced me to be more productive in my rice and so on and so forth, or my yam or my whatever else it is that I produce. You will not find a great many manufacturers saying that the influx of cheap imports into our country is problematic. They will say it's a problem.
But so the EPA is now giving them a bigger market.
Well, the EPA is a two-way thing. You are opening your market at the same time that you have access to your access to a market that you've always had has marginally improved.
Well, they say we have it because they have considered tariffs reduction and if we don't sign the EPA, perhaps we become competitors or hostile partners, and so the tariffs may be reinstated, and that's going to be difficult.
Well, I'm not sure that the European Union's first concern is that we're suddenly going to become competitors with them. The excuse for the EPA, the legal justification for the EPA, is that the terms under which goods from Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, the old colonies of Europe, enter into the European Union are beneficial compared to the terms in which other developing countries, which are of similar level of development, get. So that in that sense, in terms of the fairness of international trade, we have an unfair advantage over other developing countries who are at the same level of development as ourselves.
That's what they're offering us.
No, I'm saying that is the original problem that the EPA is supposed to cure in terms of, trade rules, international trade rules. So at no point can you say that to correct that, it requires us not to be, rather than being equal with those other developing countries, we should be equal with the European Union, which is what the EPA effectively becomes. The second element is what I was trying to refer to before, which is that you have a...
Let's understand the first element. So that former colonies, Ghana to UK, France, and La Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, the point you're making is that, yes, we are trading with them, but we have an unfair advantage, say,
I'll give you an example.
Like a Singapore.
I'll give you an example. Thailand.
Yes.
Is an old, long-standing tuna manufacturer. Ghana is a long-standing tuna manufacturer. Under the terms of our trade with the European Union, we export tuna to the European Union at a tariff rate which is anything between 12 to 24% less than a non-ACP country like Thailand exports to the European Union.
Okay, so we have an advantage.
So we have an advantage. As to whether that advantage translates into a real advantage or not, is something that I think only empirical facts can establish. If you have a situation in Thailand where there is adequate credit for the tuna industry, there is a maritime industry that supports it, there is no doomsaw there, there is low interest rates, there are all kinds of inputs that go into tuna production in Thailand, which allow it to be an integrated industry, which generates jobs all across Thailand, even for those who are not directly involved in the tuna industry and so on and so forth. You have a situation where the ability of the Thai industry to continuously raise its productivity becomes an internalized capacity. It has that capacity to do so. We have not had that. Many of our fishing trawlers belong somewhere else. Our waters are trawled left, right, center by everybody. Our stocks are going down. There's no support for some of these industries.
You're saying that the economic environment within which the Thai tuna operator operates will still make nonsense of the advantage we have with the Thais.
And actually that is a fact. Because, for example, in Ghana, one of the biggest investors and the growing ownership, with increasing ownership of the Ghanaian tuna industry, is companies from Thailand.
Oh, I see.
So despite our so-called advantage in terms of the terms of trade that we have, when you the point of the tariff that your goods face when they enter the European Union, despite that advantage, the fact that before you even get to that point, there is an integrated industry that generates growth, that benefits from the entire dynamism across the board from the Thai industry, that is therefore able to internalize technology, innovation, productivity within itself. Wherever you're going to export to, then they'll catch up with you. Some of our most precious long-standing exports, cocoa and so on and so forth, there are countries whose rate of productivity is beginning to outpace us. Latecomers. Malaysia is one of those countries. Brazil is one of those countries. And you take bananas, whatever.
So the point you're making is that what we need to be focusing on as Ghana is to get the economic environment within which the production of these raw materials can make sense.
Absolutely.
And regardless of whatever tariff, we will still be able to push into the global market.
Absolutely. Now,
to seek for lower tariffs at this time.
No, well, if you get the lower tariffs, we're all well and good. But the fact is that, in the end, what counts is your productivity. Okay? And your productivity cannot be determined by one single factory or so. It is the total complex of conditions under which you are operating, ranging from finance to agricultural supply, to technology development, to employment policy, to God knows what else. Okay, to electricity supply, utilities, port, the conditions at your port, whether there's the other inputs that you require, whether the cans themselves or the labeling or whatever it is, the packaging, all those things are done here. Okay, then that way, because you in your own terms, in your own turf, you are able to generate scale, you are able to ensure growing productivity, you are able to generate surpluses, which go back productively to be reinvested, then you stand a chance. But if you're looking at it simply from the point of view of price, and that really is the argument about the EPA, it says it's that same free trade theory, that if you compete with, if you open your borders, you get value for money, because you have a range of different suppliers who come to your market, and you choose the best price for you. You also have a range of possible options out there, and when you choose the best price, there are welfare gains to your consumers because they get goods cheap. If you choose the best price, there are gains, productive gains to your production centers because they get inputs cheap. But price, and so the main thing is that we are price constrained, and therefore we have to have a free market. But price cannot be the only determinant. What if the price is good but you don't have an income? What if the price is good and you don't have electricity to produce? Or that the technology of the company that you're employed in is so backward and so retarded that even in your own terms you have a severe underutilization of capacity.
But then if the price is good, it adds up, doesn't it?
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is
that... why shouldn't we sign and get a good price and then continue to do what we have to do to make the economics better?
You see, that sounds like a very good question, except it leaves out too many things. What I'm saying is that ultimately what you're looking at, okay, and I'm rather than theorize about it, it's best to look at the evidence. We have had that price advantage for yonks. Other people have concentrated on building their production capacity and building it not simply on the basis of dependency on external markets and the possibility of export, but ensuring that they have an integrated industry which has internal productivity dynamics, which benefits from all the things that the economy as a totality can offer, and so on and so forth. If you follow the price alone, I'm saying you leave out too many questions. If it was simply a matter of price, we've been trade liberalizing for 30 years, right?
But why should we ignore the offer of pricing?
I'm not suggesting for a moment that I'm saying that we should not take a trade policy based on a narrow single factor, because that is exactly what we have done in the past 30 years at the very least. We have liberalized left, right, and center. Now you tell me, has that led to the increase in productivity of agriculture in this country? No, maybe one or two non-traditional exports which remain vulnerable.
4 years ago we hit 1 million tons of cocoa, but it appears that we are slipping away now.
One of the reasons will be explained to you by one of the articles which was on yesterday's front page of the Business and Financial Times. One of the farmers says that we should diversify our cocoa exports away from the European Union. They take up 40% of our cocoa. The prices are going down in Europe. We are going down with it.
Where else are the prices going up?
Well, I don't know. The fact is that the argument he's simply making is an argument that does not support something like the EPA. He's saying that you need trade diversification, and that if you over-specialize and over-rely on one and lock yourself into one trade regime and do not therefore develop the full potential that other possibilities offer you, then actually you are tying one hand behind your back and probably blinding yourself in one eye as well. Okay? 2 pages later, in the same paper, also on cocoa, a former chief farmer, I think he was best farmer in 2011 or 2012 or something like that, says that, well, it's not simply about whether we get subsidies which allow us the price of the mass spraying exercise to become affordable. We need warehousing. Now that points to the point I was making about the Thai industry. You need an integrated type of production.
The integration is still not there for cocoa. 100 years after Tata.
Well, you see, one of the ostensible aims of the EPA is supposed to help us integrate into our region.
Yes.
Now that means that the integration within West African states and different economic sectors in West Africa will take place through the medium of the European Union. I'll give you an example.
But
but it's already happening.
That's contradictory.
Well, take bananas, for example. Cote d'Ivoire exports bananas. Ghana exports bananas. Cameroon exports bananas. Who are those countries who do the companies that dominate those banana exports? European
companies based here.
Yeah. Okay, who are the same in all those countries. They are the same ones who control shipping lines. They're the same ones, therefore, who exercise a dominant influence over pineapple exports and all kinds of non-traditional exports.
What's wrong with that?
No, therefore, it simply means that the ultimate benefit, okay, of that production goes to them and is externalized by them. That's what it means. That's why we can.
Very little resources left.
And that is a problem we have had for ages. Okay, that is why you can grow cocoa, or you can grow coffee, or you can grow tea, and you get 1 cedi per ton or whatever it is, and somebody else sells the finished product at for $5 or $10.
Even a derivatives advisor who probably has never seen the cocoa makes more money in London.
Well, but the derivatives advisor is not interested in cocoa. He's interested in selling contracts based on prices.
That's what I'm saying. He's never seen cocoa, but he makes money from the cocoa chain.
Exactly, and you cannot participate in that market because you don't have the scale of resources where you have to, if you take a hit on the margin shift, you take a hit and so on. It's an expensive process to engage in. So we are kind of locked in a hard place. And it is a bit of a pity that under the experience that we're living today, I mean, even the president or the opposition leader, anybody can get up and make a speech and says we have a serious balance of payments problem. One of that problems is that we import too much. Now, why is it that none of them come and claim that we have made Ghana great because we are importing too much? You don't hear them saying that, do you? So why then are the same people trying to tell us that the most advanced and extreme and thoroughgoing and far-reaching trade liberalization agreement we have ever dreamt of is on our table today, and all of a sudden it is the gate to heaven? I'm not sure that that is very consistent. It's not. Okay.
Let me come to Franklin, because you put up an article yesterday and you said what counter offer would Ghana realistically have made against signing the EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement. Based on Imani's research, is it a good thing?
Well, you know, you began the intro to this program by somehow putting it as if we were directly opposed to the EPA, if you like, deal. The fact of the matter is that the evidence bear a lot of the stand that some of us have taken, that look, and I think across the table, even during this program, Mr. Tanoh has elaborated how difficult it is to get homegrown solutions to some of the problems that we have. So we take the approach that instead of looking out for this log in your neighbor's eye, you probably, well, the speck, they say, in your neighbor's eye, you probably want to look at the logs in your own eyes. I mean, listening to Mr. Tanoh, he's mentioned several important themes like transformation, diversification, technology, I mean, competitiveness of your exports. Incidentally, these are all very fine terms that define how transformational an economy should become. Again, before I even come to the Martha's discussion, I think it is a taken that trade is a good thing. In fact, trade is a liberal, trade is the perfect liberator, if you like, of poverty, right? I mean, we've had instances where ancient Ghana traded with all sorts of empires, right? And so it's not as if it is new to actually exchange. You would have thought that after independence, we would have built our economies to the extent that would have been running ahead of even the Europeans when it came to issues of integration. It is very important to state that there's only one man who I think had that vision at heart. And that is Gaddafi, by the way. You'll be surprised. Gaddafi was one man who wanted the African Union integrated fast, actually along the lines of economic integration. And I'm surprised that this seems to be actually lost on us, to the extent that we haven't done our homework well. Then we sit and wait. Then all of a sudden, some foreigner comes and says, well, while you were sleeping, I've done A, B, C, D. But this is the new order now. Ideas have to flow across borders, and that is how innovation comes about, and that is how, if you like, services are created and enhanced. All of a sudden, we wake up and say, oh no, we can't do this, because if we did it, I mean, we're going to lose more. In actual fact, the question we should be asking ourselves, really, what are we really losing more? Because what are the products, first of all, to even trade with, right? I mean, these are very important matters that I think we should take to heart. But having said all of that, I think price obviously is the biggest indicator when, I mean, in global trade, really price.
Biggest indicator of what?
Well, an indicator as to,
Signal.
Well, it's a signal. You know, in a way, if you're going to buy stuff in the market, you've got to decide against your pocket. Right?
Based on the price.
The price. Some will say quality as well, but of course, price, you are not about inventing a new system beyond the price signal, which is the perfect, essentially, the perfect arbiter of our taste, if you like. So, again, having said all of this, it's important to situate these peripheral discussions within the context of the EPAs. I think from what I hear, there are two strands. There's the original EPA, which we've been going on and on about, which essentially I think we haven't really signed, more or less, but then it's been happening, as Mr. Tanoh said. There's been access anyway. But to have the original EPA come to fruition under the current scheme of things, it will require all the 28, I think, European Union countries to ratify, and even the 16 countries within West Africa to also ratify. But that seems to be a longer route. Now, in the interim, and again, it has to be stated that it is the EU that is driving this agenda, rightly so, because...
For somebody who's just joined the program, who doesn't really know what the EPA offer is, can you tell us what the offer is?
Well, essentially, like we've been saying, I think Mr. Tanoh has said that. I mean, it guarantees us 100% access, duty-free access to European markets. And then
guarantees our products from Ghana.
Products from Ghana. I
Or
mean, in this
Cote
case,
d'Ivoire,
Cote d'Ivoire. And in turn, the EU would have 75, it used to be 80, but it's now 75% access to your market, which leaves you with about 25% of the market to be able to do something in terms of creating local champions.
That means we're going to open up, when we talk about our market, say the Ghanaian market, we are referring to the general goods and services that are traded. Does it include services, by the way?
Yes, it will
does.
include
Okay,
services.
So the general goods and services that are traded.
Not yet.
It doesn't include services yet.
It will.
It will.
Not
I mean,
what we are talking about now.
Okay, so the general goods and services that are traded in Ghana, and they're asking to have 75% access to bring theirs in order to compete with what we already have. So if they have chocolate, they want to bring it in. So how do we navigate the other 25%? Do we legislate and say that excluded from the discussion would be, say, poultry products? Say grain. Is that the kind of thing
that gives you the opportunity to think through exactly what you want to protect, as it were.
Could we protect anything at all in the agreement that you have?
Unfortunately, that is where leadership comes in. It will be difficult.
But are we allowed to pick anything at all and protect it?
I think you can. But again, largely because what you export are mostly agriculture related, it looks as if you really open up the 75% access, you might be inundated with finished products that would render those very sectors that you want to protect really redundant. I mean, it's the crux of the matter. It is a very...
very true.
It's a delicate balance.
So we can't choose seafood, for instance?
Yeah, but even if you choose...
is part of the 25%, so you can't bring in already processed seafood from the European Union. So you can't bring in Titus sardines and
you
stuff
could.
Like that.
I think you
we
could.
can do that?
Yes,
then we
you
can
could.
produce sardines here, we can produce takis.
Well, but that is if you do have the capacity, as Mr. Tanoh has been talking about. Do you have the capacity? And it's why I see the issues of transformational leadership coming in. But let's stay.
But your article, Franklin, was really to say that our hands are tied and perhaps we should go and...
Well, so for the simple reason, as I was developing the point, is that there is the interim EPA, which essentially is what the EU and the ECOWAS leaders, if you like, are actually trying to sort out. For that one, it's essentially a unilateral decision. It's a bilateral arrangement. So it's not as if it's a block mentality, like the initial EPA, which is the original EPA. With the interim EPA, what it means is that Ghana can choose to opt out of that arrangement. But that is where the Trojan horse really is, because even if you want to wait for the original EPA, which binds the 16 countries within West Africa, and then the 28 countries in the European Union, mind you, to go through series of legislation, so it will take longer. What is on offer right now, what actually is being offered right now, is that you sign the interim EPA, which, obviously, if we didn't, then they'll slap all these sanctions against
sanctions or tariffs?
Well, they will call it. They are sanctions, essentially. You
sanctions.
Well,
yeah, you don't do what I do.
You don't do what I do.
Penalize you.
I'll penalize you. You can't have market access.
Of tariffs.
Yeah.
Yes, essentially, that's the point. So you can't
Interim
access
EPA.
the interim
It's a tax you're paying
EPA.
on.
So for
are
me,
we there now? Because Ghana hasn't signed the interim EPA.
well, it's at initial. It has not signed.
Yes.
And but that seems to be quite a smart thing for the meantime. But you see, the danger, and that's a question you asked. What happens if Ghana does not sign at all? obviously the sanctions will be slapped. And then critically, if, let's say, Ivory Coast signs it, because you are competing for global investment, by the way, I think that's a different discussion, but it's part of this discussion as well, the issues about investment, because people can quibble over the types of investment we're actually getting into this country. But that is where, for me, the danger really comes. Because if we do not ratify, sign, and actually implement, then these are the odds staring at you. You lose even the 40% agricultural related goods that you are able to send to the EU market right now.
So your view is that we have to sign the
It looks as if it's actually, you are in between, what did they say, the devil
and a hard place.
And
it's a catch-22 situation.
So for me, I think the discussions we should be having is that while the moratorium is there now, the 2-month moratorium, I don't think it's enough. I think we spent a number of years going back and forth, which probably is good. But in the intervening period that we've been waiting and actually negotiating, I'm not too sure we've been effectively negotiating. I can come to that. But in the 6 years or so that we've spent our time trying to get this deal either through or not, what have we done for our own selves? Like Mr. Tanoh has been talking about. What have we done? But that's
the past. I mean, going forward.
No. Even now, it's very important. So even if there's a moratorium for 2 months, I mean, what do you really see would happen at the end of the day? I would gamble, probably not gamble, and say that the ECOWAS guys are going to sign it.
Including Nigeria?
Including Nigeria, possibly. I mean, Nigeria could roar because it has a market. They've got the population, and so they could do that. I think that, clearly speaking, I think we also lost a moment when we, given the technical capabilities of the people we sent to be negotiating for us, because I've had very, very interesting discussions about the light-weighted nature of the people that we sent.
Where you bemoaned the lack of expertise of trade lawyers and all of that.
Do not have trade lawyers, and as I hear, there were 2. One is passed on, and they have just 1 trade lawyer right now. So how much can be done? In fact, I think you were in that team when we went to the WTO ministerial in Hong Kong. You recall, at one point in time, I saw these Harvard-trained young boys essentially dribbling our trade ministers during the negotiations. I was surprised because it sent me a clear message that the right people were not being sent to these forums to negotiate. Probably to have the likes of Mr. Tanoh and Dr. Yao Graham. These are people who really know the stuff that are supposed to be talked about. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. And this is across Africa. I recall telling Dr. Ibe Chambers at the time that I was disappointed that we had to settle immediately for aid for trade simply because we couldn't go on. If you look at the people who came negotiating, they were MPs. I'm not saying MPs do not know, but you left out critical technical expertise at home that could have been there to do the negotiation. So it's a whole maze of issues, really. And I'm saying that, look, you haven't done your homework well. You can't keep crying right now. You recall when President Rawlings in the BBC documentary asked a trade commissioner, the Blair's Trade Commission, why Tanzanians wouldn't eat Ghanaian chocolate. He said, but Tanzanians don't like chocolate. And that was telling. I mean, how much trade occurs amongst West Africans. Not too long ago, Nigeria was banning 92 products from Ghana entering its market. Ghana retaliated with some very interesting caps that were set.
So your point is that we have brought this onto ourselves?
We brought this onto ourselves.
Well, and it's not at this point that we can complain.
We really can. See,
it's too late.
Yesterday...
So frankly, I have to come to Gyekye, but it's too late? That's your conclusion?
I think it's really too late, but...
So we have to sign it. It's a better way to go.
The problem is that if we don't sign...
Given the background of the difficulties that we have brought upon ourselves,
you see, the problem...
We have to sign
this is the catch. The EU supports your budget largely. They give you lots of money, right? They actually do. The EU supports your peace building, peace campaign programs across the world. It is a very
You mean the military peacekeeping operations across
Of course,
the world?
they support it as well.
United Nations ones?
Well, they do.
Okay.
And they are looking at increasing the budget support. So they tell you, well, look, you can say all these things. These are for the cameras. But are you willing to have a big hole in your budget right now at this critical juncture where you are looking towards IMF possibly? Would you risk that? I think these are the global political
So it's a carrot and stick situation. That the EU is playing with us.
That's the point. So you lose,
and
you just don't lose the budget support.
We're incapable of winning this battle given the historical circumstances
because you know why.
Our simple ineptitude.
Exactly, because you know why. At the end of the day, if they put that on the table and said, well, look, we're going to withdraw this. In addition to that, you lose the market. The world has become so dynamic right now. So whether do we go from here?
Whether do we go for the next generation, 20 years down the line? What happens?
Well, you need smart leaders. Look, let me.
When are the smart leaders going
to
come?
They will come. Let me just before you ask Mr. Tanoh to come in. Just yesterday, I think you and I were at that program. The Africa Center for Economic Transformation launched its 2014 Transformation Index. And it's interesting, as I was listening to Mr. Tanoh, all the interesting terminologies he mentions, which are critical to a transformation that is required of a country, were there. But where do we place? If you look at export competitiveness, well, we are ranked 7th, but this is within Africa. In terms of transformation, which essentially combines all the issues of innovation, diversification, and even encouraging local champions to grow, Ghana was 16th out of 21 countries ranked. In terms of diversification, Ghana fell from 8th position in 2000 to 17th position in 2010.
What's the point you're making?
The point I'm trying to make is that the very fine elements of economic transformation that are needed to encourage you to build your capabilities. Unfortunately, we are not looking at it at all. And this is exactly the point Mr. P.V. Oben was making yesterday about policy consistency in terms of trade policy, in terms of issues around innovation and where you want to get to. And he says
your point is still the same from here, saying that we have brought this upon ourselves.
Well, we have.
All what we have done in the past, over the recent past, this is where you end up if you behave like that.
This is where you
What you now need to get out of this is smart leaders who can turn the circle around for us. That's the point you're making, isn't it?
That's the point.
After the break, we'll hear from Mr. Gyekye Tanoh on his reaction to this one. I've seen your emails, many of them coming through. In fact, some people are asking for internship at Imani, frankly, so I'll be reading that so you can consider it. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to the program, and I promised that I'll show you that interview campaign. Before then, though, a few of your comments, those of you watching. This is from Rex. It says, please tell Imani Director that I've submitted an application for internship for the past 4 months. Paul, internship and nothing else. Till now, I have not heard anything from them. At least no space excuse could make me feel wanted. A think tank should not be on the shoulder of one person, as we have in Ghana. One up Ghana is no excuse, etc., etc. Well, Franklin, that's for you. He says that he submitted an application. It looks like you want Imani to be on your shoulders alone. Derek says, good evening, sir, to all your panel members. Thank God the president didn't agree to sign the EPA deal, at least for now. But they should still remember that the decision is before them until they still have to decide. Of course, they can't overlook it, so they have to stop postponing the decision and come straight forward. Part of leadership is making difficult decisions. You don't say what you think, Mr. Safo. We want to hear that, whether you think they should sign or they should not sign. Benjamin says that the fuel price increments plus tariffs increments plus no jobs plus the fall of the city plus no lights plus no water plus bad roads plus dubious settlements, all in the name of judgment debt, is equivalent to Boko Haram cum al-Shabaab leadership. Bitter Ghana at play. Lord, save Ghana, he says. Another email from Mr. Nkrumah, who's watching us from Kumasi. Well, not yet. Anyway, so let's see that the response of Mr. Kwame Pianim, his view on the economic partnership agreement, and I will come and hear Mr. Gyekye Tanoh's response to the articulation by Franklin of Imani. We'll be right back. And we are talking today about growth with death and transformation, which has become an important word that has been associated with our economy. We know also that on the eve of this conference, the ECOWAS leaders have considered the economic partnership agreement, and it appears that it's been passed. Do you have any views on that?
I think that whatever agreements we are signing, either as a country or as a member of any group, we should make sure that it goes to support the objectives that we seek to attain for ourselves and for our people. Ghana needs ECOWAS. There's no doubt about that. We are 25 million people. ECOWAS has about 350 million people. ECOWAS has about 400 billion purchasing power. We have barely 30 billion dollar purchasing power. So, and being central also, ECOWAS is good for us if ECOWAS is working properly. So yes, it is good that ECOWAS signs an agreement, but as Ghana, we have to see, does it help us in what we seek to do, transforming our economy, diversifying our economy, moving from raw materials to add value and process.
One of the principal objectives of the European Union, which was set out by Peter Mandelson when he used to be there, was to guarantee the constant supply of raw materials to the European Union so that they could enhance their strength, which is converting raw materials into secondary products and being a major exporter to the rest of the world. If this were part of the agreement in terms of the conceptualization, would you have advised our government not to sign?
No, I say that whatever agreement we sign, we should find out whether it goes to support our goals, our objectives. If you are in Europe, of course, the whole idea of the people having colonies, the UK, France, Portugal, Spain, was to bring raw materials to them. But now the world has moved beyond that. You know, it's actually creating markets, and if the EU wants us to be able to be partners with them, we have to tell the EU, for us, cocoa is critical, it's important. And therefore, in defining what is chocolate, if the cocoa fat element is less, and therefore it's going to lead to prices that we get for our cocoa going down, you are not our friend. If it is going to say that you cannot add value in Ghana to cocoa, because if you bring it there, then the duties are going to be higher than if you brought in the beans as raw materials, we should say no. So it's very clear to me that those who have the idea that certain countries should be producers of raw materials, they are wrong. They are in the 19th, 20th century. We're in the 21st century. And it's a partnership. It's a win-win situation. You should not have any agreement that somebody benefits more than the other.
That's Mr. Kwame Pianim's view. He gave me those views yesterday at the Africa Center for Economic Transformation event. We'll show you the full version of the interview on Thursday. Quick one before I go to Mr. Gyekye Tanoh. Gafaru Ali, watching us from Tamale, says, I'm watching your program. I feel that we don't really have a choice. It's just been postponed. They will sign. They will sign it one day for sure. Another one says, China operated a closed economy for nearly 3 decades. She is today an economic giant. Has Imani Ghana presented any solutions to a peculiar predicament? Of course, you have to know that China has a population of 1 billion, so it's perhaps easier for them to operate a closed economy than for us to do so. Mr. Tanoh,
that's not entirely true, by the way.
He has presented, he has sort of given us a picture of the situation that creates the impression that we may be in dire straits in terms of the choices that are available to us right now, and that we may sink into a deeper abyss if we do not take advantage of this just to stabilize the situation and be creative next time round. What's your view on that?
I don't agree. First and foremost, I think that, well, he also made other points which I think are entirely relevant. For example, he referred to trade expertise and the manner and approach towards negotiation, and that a lot of it is our own lack of preparation and so on and so forth. Now, I want to comment on that before I come to the specific point. That may well be true, and to different degrees. But I think we also have to be fair to say it may not be the entire story. When he was talking, he referred to the fact that you get a lot of your budget from, let's say, the European Union, and they may threaten to withdraw or withhold or do. In other words, there are political pressures which push policymakers in different directions.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, that is the sense I get when people writing into your program say that we have no alternative. Okay, on the one hand, they're saying that these people are too powerful and you can't really resist them. But on the other hand, they are saying that with Franklin, that the day hasn't come yet that they believe, they are confident that we have a leadership which has alternatives. Because, of course, every situation, there are alternatives. Even as an intellectual, which he is, conceptually, it is impossible to say there are no alternatives. Of course, there are, right? And the last person you read, talking about closed economy, okay, that may be a matter of relativity, but the fact does remain. The fact does remain. No late developing country, bar none, no one example, has there been a situation where competition in terms of external relations has not been limited somewhat. It is inevitable that you ought to do that.
All have done that.
Without exception. South Korea, China, is not. You don't need a billion population to do that.
Well,
Singapore,
South Africa.
It's also, well, South Africa had a closed economy in a different way and for different purposes. It was a pariah in the international community, rightfully so, because of apartheid. It had a domestic population which it had virtually enslaved, extracted all kinds of surpluses from them, denied them land, denied them rights, and so on and so forth. It's a different...
Brazil may not fit your example.
Brazil had a dictatorship from, well, first and foremost, Brazilian industrialization. Brazil and Latin America are the originators of what was called ISI.
What ISI?
Import substitution industrialization.
Okay,
in the 1930s, in the period of the Great Depression, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico embarked on large-scale state-led industrialization, which later on gave them the technical basis to allow them to diversify in different ways and gave them a footing to bring in technology, go into partnerships with foreign capital and eventually open up and so on and so forth. But I'm saying that your man who made the point
about China
he's spot on to the degree that you have built up a certain capacity which allows you then the options and the choices. But even still today, you have to ask yourself one question. If the market and competition is always right, and is the only way to go, and in fact somebody used the word perfect, then how come that the countries that weathered the recent global crisis best are those who took measures to limit competition, whether it's capital controls, whether it's ensuring that the role of foreign...
Limit competition within, to be able to grow local industries. But that's the model that you are
not limit competition just within, because the competition, whether you're growing or local industries or not, the possibilities and prospects of that happening depends on your relations with outside. Okay? You may have some partnerships which assure technology transfer, for example. You may pick and choose and be selective about it. The fact remains that part of your agenda necessarily must include some limitation on competition sometimes, selectively, strategically.
25% in the APA is offering a 25%.
But that simply buttresses my point. Whether we've used the 25% or not, I'll give you a reason why we haven't. But I'm saying it buttresses my point in the sense that competition can destroy. And let's not beat about the bush. It can destroy millions of agricultural workers and farmers. It can destroy, close down factories by the hundreds. We have been through all kinds of... When Franklin reads the summary from the Center for Economic Transformation about Ghana not being able to innovate and so on and so forth. Why is that a surprise? We have privatized and deindustrialized at a rate of knots. On which basis then are you going to begin to innovate? Okay, we have gone through a phase where we believe that everything that the state does is wrong. So we have rolled back state expertise, a planning function, some of the best expertise that we have in applying. Oh, everybody went abroad because the state has really no role. And its complete oversight that it can have over the economy and its policy decisions should have less and less to do with the way the functioning of the economy itself.
You sound like the Brazilian President Lula, state-led capitalism. Is that what you're sort of...
I'm not talking about any capitalism or not. I'm simply making the point that competition, you can have winners, you can have losers. That's why when you mention price, it means there are price wars. When you mention trade, it means there's market share, people are competing for market share.
So you don't want unbridled competition, you don't want that. But the EPA is offering that, isn't it?
No, excuse me. What I am simply saying is that it seems particularly unwise to pick a partner where you are equalizing everything with, pretty much. The goods that land in from Europe to Ghana have no tariff on them, which is the same as moving goods from Accra to Tema. Okay? You don't pay tax going to Tema, right? The capital that comes from Europe, investors that come from are to be treated the same as Ghanaian investors. Business people that come are to be treated the same, so on and so forth. And this EPA is only this one that we are arguing about, is only the tip of the iceberg. The real issue is about investment policy, for example. Okay? Or the way in which government procurement, the expenditure of public taxes, okay, itself ought to be opened up to European businesses on the same footing and so on.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Is it part of it?
It is coming to, we have.
So that when Ministry of Roads has a contract, then the Europeans can get into that one as well?
Precisely. And I'm
that cannot be part of the 25% left for Ghanaians?
Well, I'll give you an example of the kind of 25% things that
I don't know if I should come in at this.
we are just 5 minutes, so just wrap it up and then I'll take
when Franklin makes the point about institutions and failures and having shot ourselves in the foot, I'm making one point in direct response to that. I'm saying that it is not simply a self-willed process. There have been conditionalities, IMF conditionalities, World Bank conditionalities, EU threats here. The other time we passed a law in our sovereign parliament to raise tariffs on poultry and rice. What happened to it? The very next day, the Ministry of Finance itself...
they withdrew it, why did they withdraw it? That was unfortunate. Because the European Union said no.
But this is daily practice.
That particular one was bad.
If you say we have gone into a negotiation freely, and that the only outcome that we have right now is because of our own lack of this, then how does that explain that in 2008, Kufuor sat here in Accra at the ACP summit and condemned the European Union for their bullying tactics, for their threats, for their... 4 years down the line, in 2012, when Ghana was handing over the chairmanship of the ACP to Equatorial Guinea, the current president, Mahama, made the same point. In 4 years of that negotiation, nothing changed. The day that the whatever trade expertise we have or we don't have, it is a fact, a proven fact, a known fact, that the EPA document that we initialed as an interim came from some official. They were so arrogant that the person who drafted it for the Côte d'Ivoire, sitting in Brussels somewhere, I'm sure some junior official somewhere, the same document, they just put Ghana somewhere and brought it here. The trade ministry at no point had any unanimity that was the best way to go. In the end, it was Castle that intervened because somebody else was pushing the Castle. So when you say there's no alternative, what does that suggest? It says that the fact that you are impoverished and poor and powerless means that you should opt to remain impoverished, poor and powerless. Now, when there have been countries that have successfully transformed, okay, it is not simply is it ahistorical.
But he's talked about the way in which we have used human resource. For instance, people like you have not been applied by state institutions.
Can I just make some quick ones? Very quick. First of all, we did import substitution in this country in the 60s, and it collapsed not because of some foreign.
It collapsed because of the 66 coup, I think.
Well, that's the point.
Not that the policy itself failed, but the government was overthrown and the philosophy changed.
Maybe you didn't listen to me, but I wasn't saying...
Actually, you have a point. I'm just trying to make the point.
But the imports of still the 60s, I mean, the record is that it collapsed after 66.
And by the way, China had economic zones as well within itself. While it was still closed largely, it still had economic zones where people could come in and trade. Let me just say that, look, why I say that we shoot ourselves in the foot. While we are obviously angry at the situation right now, that someone is trying to wriggle our hands, what are we doing right now in terms of building a productive economy? 75%.
Don't put the handcuff yourself.
But that's the point. 75% of the people on your payroll, public payroll, 75% are tagged as semi-skilled and unskilled. Yet they swallow how much? 70% of your internally generated revenues. Now
you're talking about single spine.
Well, that's the point. So you spend money
because all
where
the European
you need to
don't pay tax. They've been given tax holidays.
That's the point. But I'm just saying that you've got to be able to understand that most of these things that we quibble about, we actually wait until they actually stare us in the face. Then we begin to say, oh, we shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. Alternatives have always been there. And that's smart leadership. I think that is the point. Look, Ghana has been...
here.
I agree with Frank.
And on the CDB loan...
CDB loan, we'll come
talk about smart leadership. It will not be smart leadership to sign this economic partnership.
We shouldn't sign it.
It will be quite...
We'll continue with this discussion. Thank you very much.
It will be quite disgraceful leadership.
And then we'll put this up on our website so people can also comment. Thank you very much for watching, viewers. See you on Thursday. Good night. This program will be on tomorrow morning.